Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of Open Up the Workforce. We have Bridget Hurd here from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Bridget has had such an amazing career driving diversity, equity, inclusion in healthcare, in a corporate setting, and driving culture. We're so grateful for you to be here with us and share with our audience the work that you've been doing. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your career story?
Oh, yes, I would love to do that because I actually have a pretty interesting story. My background is actually in communications. I have an undergraduate degree in communications from the University of Michigan with a minor in business, and then also an MBA from our local university here in Detroit, Wayne State University. And so my journey has been one where I've used my communication skills, my community relations skills to center around healthcare. And in my different roles in the healthcare industry, I've had the opportunity to engage with what I call real people. So real people in the community, and I have learned from them. And so being exposed to the many different kind of individuals who make up our communities, that really was my entree into understanding the value and the importance of recognizing both the differences as well as the similarities in people and in different communities. And I think being on that path is the path that ultimately led me to doing what I do now, which is truly focusing on creating and promoting an inclusive environment in our different companies that fall under Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan.
Thank you for sharing more about your work and really for the impact that your work is having on communities, but also the organization at large. I'd love to dig in a little bit deeper, especially given what's impacted the entire world the past few years around healthcare and ensuring accessibility. How did you get so passionate about this space, addressing inequalities and increasing access to healthcare?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I've been a part of the healthcare industry for a long time. And when you work in the community, I mean, you're actually touching real people, so to speak. You're hearing their stories, you're hearing their concerns. I often describe one of my passions as being able to connect real people to healthcare institutions or the healthcare ecosystem, and connecting the healthcare ecosystem to real people, because it's really all about addressing those real healthcare needs. And first, we have to understand what they are. We don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're making assumptions about what people in our communities need. We need to ask first. And so that's been a huge part of my career. So what I've learned from the many, many individuals that I've talked to throughout the years is what has led me to this passion that I have and this desire to kind of look at the healthcare industry, look at access issues, look at quality issues, and help to champion initiatives that break down the walls of the institutions that bring people in and take us out to connect with the people. So the people or the community has really been that thing that has gotten me to where I am.
Thank you. I think that from my understanding too, culture has such a big impact in how we approach healthcare in so many ways. My family is in medicine, and growing up in a cultural community, it really has made me aware to the impacts that it has, especially as I talk to others in my community as well. At Blue Cross Blue Shield, you oversee the diversity and cultural competency learning opportunities for your employees, and you lead the 15 employee resource groups. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about those cultural competency learning opportunities. Can you share more?
Yes, and cultural competency is truly the cornerstone for us here at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. It's that ability to be able to recognize, and I'll say first understand and recognize and appreciate what those differences are in different cultures. And cultures does not reflect ethnicity or race. It's truly the broad thing. It could be a generational culture. We can look at members of the LGBTQ plus community and understand that culture. It could be a culture of just different ideals and different perspectives. And so to develop that capacity to, one, be self-aware, to understand who you are, what your beliefs are, and then ask yourself the fundamental question of, why do I believe what I believe? and then take the steps to learn about different communities and cultures and generations and work styles and perspectives. When I think about work styles, for example, one thing I often think about is something that I had an aha moment probably about 4.5 to 5 years ago now. And when I talk about diversity and what diversity means, that is way more than race or the normalized way. In the past, we talked about gender in terms of male and female. That is way more than that. When I use being an introvert or having strong introvert qualities or any kind of introvert qualities as a descriptor or one of the identities that can fall under diversity, it kind of just opened up a whole new door of understanding for so many employees. And when we think about our workplace community, it's something like understanding if an employee has an introverted quality or an extroverted quality. And for the leaders in particular, it provides a pathway for how to engage best with an employee so they can be their very best. So it's really taking that opportunity to develop that cultural competency and being able to tune in to the needs of the person that is in front of you. And I often say the opportunity to get people out of boxes and just focus and be mindful.
Yeah, I think it's particularly fascinating, the breadth and scope which you talk about culture from age and being an introvert, extrovert. That's really fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to understand, how do you get the different cultures involved in this process when we talk about actually implementing these and educating around these competencies?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we have numerous employee resource networks, which really serve as a point of connection for our employees and for allies. So individuals who may be interested in learning more about the Latino community, the Hispanic and Latino community, or learning about those with African ancestry. We have a multicultural employee resource network that really looks at a multitude of ethnicities, Polish, Italian, Irish. We explore all of those different identities because we bring those into our workplace community. So that is one thing that we do. But then also we have over 150 learning sessions every year that we're exploring these different cultures and communities and generations and work styles and perspectives. We bring employees together and we share, we talk, we learn from our different experiences. And so it's so different from seeing something on television and thinking that's matter of fact. When you learn about something from a coworker or you're sitting in and listening to a presentation during a learning session, it really expands your consciousness and your awareness. And so as a result, you carry that differently into different interactions that you have, whether it's with another colleague, whether it's with a community member, whether it's with the members that we serve through the health plan, for example.
I couldn't agree more. And I appreciate that you are taking such a proactive and conscious approach to doing that and facilitating those opportunities. When we first connected, I remember learning a lot about the work that you've done during a challenging time, which was COVID for us. And you recently, you had won the DentaQuest 2020 Health Equity Heroes Award, which recognized leaders like yourself who have advanced equity during COVID-19. And you were also recognized as the top 100 diversity officers by the National Diversity Council in 2021. So I would love to understand from you how you think it's important to address racial disparities in response to events like COVID.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to expand it. It's racial disparities, but it's also for members of our LGBTQ plus community. It's for members of persons who have disabilities. All of that becomes a very important job of addressing health and healthcare disparities, understanding and addressing what we call social determinants of health. And this all falls under the big umbrella that we hear a lot about now, which is advancing health equity. Advancing health equity is actually one of the 4 strategic objectives of our inclusion and diversity strategy. And we have been working on this for a number of years, way before COVID became a reality in our world. However, in 2020, in April specifically, that's when we started seeing the data about the disparities that we were seeing specific to COVID. And so that's important, specific to COVID. So the disparity specific to COVID was the persons and people who were getting COVID, and then those people who were dying from COVID. And for example, we look at the state of Michigan in particular. We know that African Americans were hardest hit in those early months of COVID, where they make up 14% of the population here in Michigan. However, when we look at cases and deaths, it was more than 40%. So that's a dramatic disparity. And so we had to develop a rapid response to get credible, reliable information out to the community, our members in the community at large. So that was a big part of it. And when we talk about COVID, there are these things called the underlying conditions like having diabetes, kidney disease, lung disease. Those were contributing factors to some of the severe outcomes. So also ensuring that we were addressing those things in the appropriate way. So it's a big story when we think about health and healthcare disparities and understanding the drivers. But again, it's a complex thing that has many drivers, many factors, but being able to break it down. So one, you level set on what all of these terms mean. And I know we don't have time to do that today, but level setting on the terminology and what they mean, because that's so critical. Because if we're using the words interchangeably, we're not going to be able to get to the right solutions. And then taking the time to look at data, understand the data, but then most importantly, take steps to develop interventions and to engage the entire healthcare ecosystem. So it's a lot more that can be said about addressing health and healthcare disparities, but we're really proud of the work that we've done since 2016. And in 2020, in December of 2020, we actually formally established what we call our Office of Health and Healthcare Disparities.
That's so powerful because it is such a holistic approach. And when we were speaking about healthcare, there is, like you said, so many drivers that we could unpack. I'd love to learn a little bit more about how maybe the healthcare community at large has come together, maybe to share resources, because this is, a bigger issue than just an organizational level. And I get excited that diversity, equity, inclusion oftentimes brings companies together and partners together.
Yes, and I'm going to expand it beyond even just healthcare organizations. It includes community partners and partnerships. It includes the pharma industry as well. It includes employers because they have employees who they're providing coverage and benefits for, and they really want to ensure the well-being of their employees. So we have policymakers who are a big piece of it. We know there are a lot of new policies that are coming from the federal government, from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So we all play a role in this. I'm going to go back to the level setting on definitions, understanding the data, coming together to really identify what each of these different stakeholders can do. And the key is talking to one another and communicating. So, for example, with our strategy, we have 5 primary focus areas: primary care access and quality, behavioral health, maternal health, chronic disease management and prevention and health promotion, and then a special focus on social determinants of health. And so those are the things that kind of guide our interactions. I've had the privilege of participating on the Michigan task force on COVID, and I've got that name all mixed up today, Michigan Disparities COVID Task Force, something like that. And, that was another way. It was interdisciplinary, and it brought together all of the different stakeholders to rally around providing that accurate, reliable information about COVID, increasing access to testing sites. Those are just key things that the different kind of entities and organizations can provide.
Thank you. And with something so interdisciplinary and so many factors leading into this, how do you start to maybe break down or figure out how you report on this? Do different teams take ownership? Because it seems like it could be a lot if you want to get started.
Yes, it's definitely a lot. You don't start big, you start small. And understand your particular market, understand what those needs are in terms of the community. Look at that data, understand what's happening, understanding what the disparities are, and then you start there. And you think about, well, what do I do first? Probably engage the community to understand what they're actually dealing with or facing from day to day. And then you just keep building from there. So like I said, we've been working on addressing health and healthcare disparities since 2016. And each year we continue to build on that foundation. And it takes time. You develop the data, then you do a deep dive on the data, you identify interventions, and then you implement interventions. So it's definitely a process. Start small, take the appropriate steps, and you will get to the impact that you're looking for.
Wonderful. And as Symba, we do focus on early careers, and we do focus on the talent side of things. And we believe that working with early talent, you can give back and impact the community, especially as they grow into leadership and roles. Would love to understand your perspective at Blue Cross Blue Shield as far as the early career strategy and diversity, equity, inclusion at more of the corporate level.
Yes, well, I work closely with our human resource team. And so in our organization, inclusion and diversity actually has a very unique role. We're not just an HR function. We really focus on embedding the concepts of inclusion and diversity in all aspects of our company, in our operations. From product development, are we asking the right questions in the right way to understand that one size does not fit all? What does this new product mean for persons with disabilities? Do we need to make some changes to make sure that it works for a broader community? So that's an important part of it. So embedding inclusion and diversity into our different practices. We also work closely with procurement around supplier diversity. We also work with our healthcare value area, that we call it, in terms of addressing health equity. So very diverse. So our human resources and talent acquisition team has a lot of different things in place, from the recruitment and retention perspectives in terms of developing pipeline programs starting at the middle school level, engaging with historically Black colleges and universities. Something that we've done in the last several years is focused on recruitment from community colleges. So that's on that recruitment side. When we look at the retention piece, we have various programs that help our employees truly understand what a career is. How do you grow in your career? How do you move to the next level in your career? And it's not always about the vertical, it's sometimes the lateral, and creating that understanding. And we have various coaching and mentoring programs that are in place to also help our employees grow and develop. And I'll just say one more thing, bring it back to where we started talking about cultural competency. When we as individual employees develop our cultural competency, we have no other option but to grow and develop. And it also enables us to provide the best in customer service. So it all is a very important part of what we do here at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan.
You for that perspective and for such a holistic approach to diversity, equity, inclusion that is, like you said, well beyond just an HR recruitment function. It is part of the practice, from supplier diversity to the long-term retention and mentorship programs that you have in place. So I think there's so many examples that our listeners can take back with them, hopefully implement within the work they're doing. And at Symba, as you know, we began as a social impact startup with late Congressman John Lewis around this whole notion of a quest for good trouble. And our mission is to open up the workforce. And to us, that means addressing access to jobs and wealth creation and creating an equitable future for everyone to be successful. So I'd love to ask you, Bridget, what do you think are the next steps for talent leaders and leaders in general? Let's go beyond just talent leaders, as we've been talking about, to truly open up the workforce?
Yes, I think for leaders is really maybe I can use the terms being brave and courageous, but looking into the mirror and understanding what biases we may or may not have. And as human beings, we all have some kind of unconscious bias. And that plays out in who we hire, how we mentor, who we mentor, the opportunities we give for special assignments and projects. And that sometimes limits the engagement of different individuals in our workforce, and we don't even realize that. So the more that we build our cultural competency, the more that we learn about different people, understanding their real stories, the more we begin to erase just a little bit of unconscious bias that we may have and doesn't show up. I can give one quick example. A few years back, a vice president in our organization reached out to me. And he shared that, I was looking around at my team and I recognized that most of the members, my directors, are white. And we just had an open position. And we had two highly qualified African American and Black candidates. He said, but we didn't hire them. We hired another white individual. And so he wanted to talk about that. So we were able to, I asked him questions, allowing him time to respond. And as we went through the process, it really came down to the fact that the two African American and Black individuals, even though they were highly qualified, they had never been afforded the same opportunity for learning a particular market that other individuals had. So it's about being more conscious and thinking about moving from that ideal of I'm more comfortable with this person, or I think this person would fit in better. Thinking about how we think about those things is really, really crucial. And so again, that opportunity to look at ourselves in the mirror and remove that bias. And so I was really proud of him. And he told me that a few years before, he wouldn't have never even noticed, but it's because of I won't say the more than 150 learning sessions that we have every year that just talk about real people and learning about both our differences as well as our similarities. And it just removes the fear. No one's foreign, no one's unknown. We're all just human beings communicating with one another.
What a powerful story, I should say. And I would say that also that it's not easy oftentimes to create space for those conversations, right? To, move away from the default, take a pause and actually look and question the way you think. And it has me thinking a lot right now. And I look forward to also diving into some of those questions that you asked on my own time. And I appreciate you for sharing with our listeners. Thank you for the impact, for the work that you are doing, especially in healthcare. It impacts all of us in so many ways. I'm personally such a big fan and so grateful we get to spotlight your work. And before we wrap up, Bridget, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we didn't discuss?
Nothing else. I'll just add by saying that, the work of inclusion and diversity, as we call it, is not just about the work that happens in a department. It truly is about all of us coming together to work together.
Thank you so much, Bridget. We appreciate you for being with us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share today.